Alright, I'm going to show you how to build a very basic arcade testing station. And I mean basic by this will only help you see the video and the audio of most arcade PCBs. You can always add to it so you can do more, like using controls and so on, but that'll be for later on. But to start out, the tools you're going to need for this is just a soldering iron, pliers, wire cutters, wire strippers, wire crimpers, a amplifier of some kind, either a mono or a stereo, it really doesn't matter. Some kind of a speaker. I wouldn't go above 8 ohms. This is a little 6 ohm one that I tore out of an old flat screen TV, and it'll work just fine. We're going to be using a flat screen TV as our kind of testing monitor. So I've got a CGA to VGA video converter. You can also get an HDMI out style one. They just cost about $10 to $20 more, so I just stick with the VGA because you can just use a cheap computer monitor. And of course you're going to want a VGA cable with it. You're going to need male insulated quick disconnects, some standoff posts for the PCB boards, various connectors like T-taps, and you're going to need these types. That's going to be for the power supply. Of course, you're going to need a power supply. You also need some kind of an edge connector. I'm just starting with a basic 56 pin. You can get any size that you need or add and create a collection of them. Some kind of a power cord. Mine has a switch on it, so it'll be a little easier. Of course, you're going to need wire, and then something to mount it to. So I got a scrap piece of wood from the shop. All these wires here, this is from the past testing station I built. I, over the years, tore it apart and stole parts and pieces from it, so now it's time to rebuild it and hopefully keep it this time. It does help a lot. So, those are just some of the basic things we're going to need, and I'm going to clean this up and get set up to wire the edge connector. That's one of the first things I do, and then from there we'll go on to setting up all our parts on our piece of wood and wire it all together. Alright, we'll be right back here. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and start working on the edge connector first. Like I said before, I had one of these units built a while ago, and I just kind of tore it apart over the years, so I have a lot of wires already made up from the past one, but I'm going to go ahead and just show you how to make a couple of these just real quick. Extremely simple. All you got to do is just get any lengths of wire. It's pretty good to use some scrap wire with this. Great way to use it up. And just strip off a little bit. You don't need too much. Some of the insulation is going to kind of melt depending on how hot your iron gets and everything. Mine's not the greatest, so I'm anticipating it's going to melt some of the insulation. But you just want to tin the tip of the wire so it's easier to connect to the edge connector that we're using. Okay. Now, that's just a little bit too long for what I need, so I'll just trim it a little bit. It's not a really big deal. They don't all have to be the same length or anything like that. Alright. Now the next thing I'm going to do is add a T-tap to it. Basically what this does is it gives me the ability to use a male quick disconnect and just plug a wire into it really quickly. Real fast, real easy, real simple, and cheap. So all you do is just kind of line it up with the end of the wire. Try not to have too much sticking out. Take a pair of pliers and just, that's it. All done. So I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of these little wires here, and then we'll go ahead and start attaching them all to the edge connector. Alrighty, so I'm all set up now to set this edge connector up. Now, you can go ahead and just put wires on every single tab if you want to. I'm not going to do that. I'm just testing out a Mr. Do board, so I'm only going to put on the wires that I need at the current moment. And in the future, if I have another game board that needs this 56 pin, and the wires are in different places, I'll just add the wires as I need them. Or if I decide to add an add-on, I guess, to this whole thing where I can use the joystick and the push buttons, then I can do all that as well. But since we're doing Mr. Do, I have the manual actually, and here's the schematic for it. Well, not schematic, the pinout. Here's the pinout. So basically all I need to do for this connector is set up the ground, the power supply ground, the positive 5 volt, the positive 12 volt, the audio negative, the audio positive, and then the video red, green, blue, the video sync, and then the video ground. Once I get those set up, then I'll have everything I need to operate the basic test unit. So what I'll do is I'll keep my pinout right next to me and go ahead and base everything off of that. So we'll try and get a little bit closer to this edge connector. I don't know how well I'm going to be able to do. That might be the best. Okay. So, from what this tells me, pins 1, 2, A and B, by the way, are the pins on the solder side of the board. So it's essentially pins 1 and 2 on the solder side. But anyway, 1, 2, A and B are the ground. So I'm going to go ahead and just stick 1 right on number 1. And I pre-tinned all of these, so it just makes it a little easier. Sorry about that. The garage heater kicked on. That thing's a little too loud. So anyway, so we just got the ground wire put on. The next one I'm going to throw on is the positive 5, which is going to be on pins 3, 4, C, and D. And we'll just go ahead and put this on pin number 3. Okay. Now, the next one will be the 12 volt. And 12 volt is on pin 8 and pin J. So we'll go ahead and put on pin number 8. Okay, so now we have the power hooked up. So what we're going to want to do next is, well, we have to flip it over. Alright, so I'm going to be flipping this back and forth a couple times, just so that I make sure I'm on the right pin. What we're going to do next is the audio. And the audio ground is pin 11, or M. So pin 11 is right there. So that's 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay. Alright. Now, we also need one on pin 10, or L, so the one right before it. Okay. Now that's our audio taken care of. Now the last bit that we have to do is our video. So, the video is going to be down on this end. I'll try and get that lined up a little bit better. I think it's the best I'll be able to do. But we'll start down here and work our way up. And that would be pin 26, or letter D, is our video ground. And that's actually going to be 3 pins from 28. So right here, 1, 2, 3. And that's our video ground. Now, right next to it is our composite sink. And right next to that one is our video blue. And then video green. And last but not least, video red. Okay, so that is all the wires that I'm going to need for the Mr. Do board. Now basically, at this point, to finish up, you can just throw over some shrink tubing and just use a lighter, very carefully if you use a lighter so you don't burn your wires or your edge connector, or use a some kind of hot air gun, a real smaller one, like a reflow station hot air gun. That would probably be a lot better. But I'm going to go ahead and finish this up, getting the shrink tubing on, and then we're going to go ahead and start making a couple of wire harnesses that we need to finish up the actual build. Then we can put it all together and see what it does. Alright, well, the next thing we got to do is wire up our speaker. As you can see, it's already got some wires onto it. There were the wires that were pre-attached to the speaker after I took it out of the television I tore apart. And all I did was add these connectors, these like spade-like connectors on the end. And that's just so it can plug into the amplifier jacks a lot easier. But I also want to add another 2 wires to this, so that if a game board has its own amplifier built in, there's no need to use the amplifier that I have here. So instead, it can just plug directly into the board and use the amplifier on the board. And you can either just have 2 wires soldered off this and have just 2 loose wires running, or you can zip tie the wires together. Since it's only going to be 2, like to twist them. And a really cheap and quick kind of way to do it is just take your 2 wires and tie it to some kind of a loop or something to hold it. Like I just put a zip tie around this leg and tied it to that, and then you run them to the end of a drill. And you gotta be careful, don't over twist them. You can easily snap the wires and whatnot. So you just slowly, well, I guess not too slow, but slow enough. Just be real careful. Pay attention to the wire as it twists. You can also feel the drill pulling in as the wire gets tighter. You don't want to let it pull in too much. Now see that nice tight kind of twist? That will do pretty good. And the key thing to kind of remember though is to somehow hold on to it. This is not going to be easy doing it one-handed, so there we go. So you loosen it up, pull it out of the chuck, and slowly loosen your grip on the wire, because it's going to try to unravel, and if you let it go too quick, it'll actually look terrible. But if you go nice and slow, it actually stays twisted. So it looks like a nice, kinda sorta professional wire. It won't be all over the place. Okay, now that I showed you how I twist a wire, we'll go ahead and just get this connected to the speaker and move on to the next part. Okay, so back on the bench here, I already went through and stripped the 2 wires and tinned them with solder and trimmed them I mean, it's nothing new. It's just like with the edge connector. Do the exact same thing. The other side, I'm going to strip these two, and I'm going to add a male quick disconnect so that I can actually plug it into one of the wires off of here. Not very hard to do. Just strip a little bit extra. I like to make sure that it's a little tougher to push it into the connector, so I bend it, the wire in half. Not everybody does this. I mean, it's kind of whatever you feel like doing. I prefer this just so I get a tighter feel, or a tighter fit, I should say. Just crimp it down. If the little blade inside bends a little bit, you can adjust it pretty easily. It's not that big of a deal. This isn't meant to be anything for heavy, major use anyway. So you don't have to be too particular about all this. That worked out good. Alright, so now this end's set up so I can plug it into the edge connector wherever a circuit board particularly has the sound output. Now what I want to do is connect these two to the terminals on the actual speaker. And looking right at it, you can actually see where it says positive and negative. I don't know if I can get that to pop up on the camera. I have my doubts, but we'll just get as close to this as we can. Okay. You can kind of see it, but there's your negative and there's your positive. Okay, so there's our speaker all wired up. Alright, now that's done. The last harness, I think it's going to be the last harness, we'll see. But we need to twist together a harness for the power supply now. Running our 5 volts, our ground, our negative 5 volts, and our positive 12 volts to the game board, actually. So we need to build a harness to plug into the power supply so that we can plug in the power to wherever we need to on a game that we're testing. So I'm going to get set up for that, and we'll go from there. Alright, so I went ahead and twisted up the last 2 harnesses that I needed for this little project, and the second one I had to twist up was the audio input for the amplifier. I remembered at the last minute, so I made that quick. But here's the little harness I twisted together for the power to the circuit board. And I already went ahead and connected the quick disconnects. You already saw that. There's no need to continue doing that. But what we'll do here is we'll add the Spade connectors really quick. And these are the sides that are going to go onto the power supply and onto the actual sound amplifier. So very much like the other quick disconnects, you just want to strip out some wire. And again, I always like to strip out just a little extra so I can kind of fold over the wire, just to give myself a little extra something for it to grab onto. You don't really have to do that. That's just something that I do. It's a habit, so I just haven't stopped. Okay, you just take your little Spade connector, get it in. See, it's a nice snug fit, and that's what I like. And go ahead and crimp it on down. Give it a tug, we're good to go. Just move on to the next one.
Okay, and that's our power cable. Now, we'll just do the same thing to the audio cable real quick. Same thing. Strip out a little bit of wire. A little extra. Again, I like to fold them over. Okay, and there we go. So that is our audio and our power cables completely done. We have everything done. The only thing we didn't build on this, because it was already built, is the video cable. When I bought my video converter board a long time ago, it came with one of these connectors. I don't remember what they're called. I just call them a VGA connector. I know that's not its name, but that's what I'm calling it. And essentially, I just did the same thing. I made it a twisted wire harness with the quick disconnects. And all I do is I plug this in to the video in on the video converter board. And these go into the red, green, blue, sync, and ground from the PCB board. And then that's all I have to do, because I didn't build this because I already have it. It's extremely simple. You get your hands on one of these connectors, and most likely it's going to come with a video converter board, and you just splice it in to a harness. And that's it. Alright, so now we have all our harnesses done. The next step is to assemble everything. So I'm going to get all this stuff organized and get the board out, and we're going to go ahead and start placing all our parts and get ready to wire it all up. Okay, now it's time to put everything all together. Now, luckily for me, I had this built once before, so this piece of wood already has a lot of the holes that I need. Essentially, all you gotta do is just find something to mount all this to, so it's easier for you to just carry around and use it whenever you please. First thing we'll do is just throw the power supply on here. Lined up with the hole that I created for it. Now, I laid this out so it should have enough space on it to upgrade it later. I have plans to add a few things to it, such as a power switch, so I can get rid of the power cord I have for this right now and get one that has a field ground. So then I'll put a fuse on it, a filter, and I can actually turn it on and off that way. And of course I'm thinking about putting some buttons on here for service switches. And then of course I want to make an extension piece to put a joystick. And maybe even some buttons on that too, so you can test it a little farther. But the next thing I'm going to put on will be the speaker. Get that built real quick. Now I'm using these washers here because it has these rubber boots, and it's going to help make sure that that screw doesn't push all the way through and actually holds the speaker in place. Okay, there we go. So, we got our power supply and our speaker mounted. Now, move you over here a little bit. I'm going to put the sound amplifier in.
sets of screws quick in these little posts. It's got snap-in posts in the board, so I don't have to use a standoff post or anything like that to raise the board off the piece of wood. See, it's got little standoffs already on it, so I'm not really too worried. It worked fine before, it'll work fine again. Okay, that's on there pretty good. Alright, now the last one. We're going to need a couple of standoff posts, and that's for the video converter board. Okay, so we're going to put the video converter board on now. I'm only going to be using 2 screws to put it on, because I have a feeling when I do a little bit of upgrading, I may have to reposition it. But for right now, for just this basic little test setup, this will do just fine. So I'm just going to go ahead and get the screws inside the board. Okay. And all I gotta really do is just be careful when I hook things up to the board so I don't overexert it or crack it or damage. Like when I plug in over here, I don't want to push down too hard. Alright, so that is all set up. Now we can actually wire it up. And the first thing I'm going to wire up is the speaker, because it's just right there. And the speaker out. Let's see if I can get us in there. It's right there. Alright, let's reposition again. There we go. Alright, like I was saying before, we're going to go ahead and start wiring this up. And we'll just start with the speaker, because this is the closest thing to the amplifier, so... Okay. Okay. Now that we got our speaker hooked up to the amplifier, we got to hook up power to our video converter and to the amplifier. Now the thing to know is, the amplifier, or at least the one that I have, is 12 volts DC. And the video converter board, you get to choose. It's either going to be 12 volt or 5 volt DC. So I'm just going to go ahead and use the 12 volt line for this, since this is 12 volt. And I made a little harness for it. Basically, I got this barrel end that plugs right into the video converter board. Then I got these little Spade connectors to hook up to the 12 volt line of the amplifier. And then I got 2 more Spade connectors to plug into the 12 volt line of the power supply. So I'm going to go ahead and try and fish these under these wires. Now, I made these a little extra long, mainly for, well, just in case I have to move stuff around when I go to upgrade it. Give me a little extra to work with. So we have our 12 volt on our amplifier all hooked up now. Okay, so we'll zoom out just a little bit here. Oh, there we go. And flip it around. Alright, I don't know if that'll focus on the power supply very well or not. We'll see. Yeah, not too bad. Alright. Now, the next thing we have to hook up, before we hook up that 12 volt for our amplifier and converter board, is going to be our actual little power supply harness that we built. So, what we're going to do, depending on this power supply. Alright, 12 volts at the very bottom, so we'll hook that one up first. Take our 12 volt line, there, and then the power cord that goes to the PCB. Loosen that screw just a little bit more. There we go. Okay. See that help me. Alright. Awesome. Now, above that is our -5. So we'll go ahead and we'll hook up our -5. Alright, -5 is hooked up. See if we can't get a better view yet. Okay, so our -5 is hooked up. Right above that, we have 2 ground terminals. And just because I'm going to separate the 2 grounds. And all we have left is the 5 volt. Okay. Now with that done, we're going to hook up the power cord. Again, in the upgrade, I'm going to upgrade this to a 3-prong, so I have a field ground. But right now, this 2-wire lamp cord with a built-in switch will work for just the basic purpose that I need. Now the field ground is right here, and here are our 2 AC lugs. Sorry about that. Okay, so there's our power cord. Now, we'll zoom out a little bit here to reposition. Okay, now we're going to go ahead plug in the last couple cords that we need, which is our audio input for the amplifier, and then our video input for the video converter board. Now, the video converter board one, that one's extremely easy. It's just plugging it in. And again, since I don't have a support on this side, I just gotta make sure I support it when I go to plug this in. Now, I have 3 or 4 of these video converter boards, and to be honest, I don't know if this one fully works. I think I have 1 or 2 that don't, but we'll find out. Now that that's hooked up, we'll just go ahead and plug in the audio in now. Okay, audio in is all set up. Alright, now that that is all hooked up, the only thing we really have to do now is get our monitor, plug in a VGA on the output over here, right there, and then pull out the Mr. Do board and get everything all plugged in and check it out. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and get the monitor, the VGA cable, and our game board, and we're going to plug it in. We're going to see if this works or not. Alright, well, I got everything all set up that we need, and let's go ahead and get everything plugged in. I pulled out the pinout from Mr. Do, just so that I make sure I get everything correct. I don't want to screw this up. So, first thing we're going to do is the video side of everything, just because it's kind of closer. Just get it done. Alright, so this wire here is the video ground. So I look for video ground. Here it is. And all I have to do is just connect these two like so. And that's it. And do the rest the same way. The wire next to that one is going to be our sync. Next to sync is video blue. And next to video blue is video green. There we are. And of course, last but not least, is our red. Alright, now that our video is set up, let's go ahead and get the audio done. Now with this particular Mr. Do board, it doesn't have an amplifier on it. So we are going to have to use the amp. So we'll grab the cable, which I did label amp in. And I also made the other one speaker in, just in case, just so I can remember which is which. But, looking at these, let's see here. So this one here is going to be our audio ground. This is the same thing. And then our audio positive. Okay. Now the last thing is to add the power. So, I already know this one here is our 12 volt. This one right here is our 5 volt. And this one here will be our ground. Now Mr. Do doesn't use -5, so I don't need to use this one. Okay. We'll get that off the board. We'll go ahead and get you repositioned here so you can kind of see the monitor. There we go. Alright, so everything's all hooked up, and it should work just fine. We'll go ahead and plug in the test unit and power it up. Here we go.
Okay, before I was rudely interrupted by a dead battery, I got some new batteries in here. Well, sort of new. I kind of hope they hold up. We're going to go ahead and start it again. As you saw right before I had a battery malfunction, the image is a little messed up, and that actually turned out just to be like a syncing issue, possibly. I don't know. I pressed this little button on the video converter board, and it's almost like it goes through like a... I'm not exactly sure exactly what it goes through, but it cleared the picture up just fine. So, here we go. And there it is, Mr. Do. Alright, so, some of the little features that we can actually do with this. Obviously, we're seeing the image of Mr. Do. So the game is playing. Seems like it's got good graphics and all that wonderful jazz. Now I have it set on free play so we can test the audio. Okay. So I got a gator clip set up, and I'll press player 1. Here is 21. There we go. And look at that. We can adjust the audio. Alright. And you should be able to tell, this is a very basic test setup. So you can plug in, various different types of PCBs and actually check to see if they work. Hear the sound and so on. And of course, I'm going to make some add-ons to this so that I can have my own coin switches and menu option buttons and things like that, so I can test it out even more than just this very basic kind of test. That's pretty much kind of it, really. There's not much more to it. This is just a very, very, very basic way of testing it. I guess a key thing to remember is this particular test unit is only going to be able to run game boards that are 5 volt, 12 volt, or negative 5 volt. You won't be able to do unique ones like Atari has, where they have like a 22 volt and I think a 32 volt or something like that. So for stuff like that, you're going to need the actual game cabinet, or you're just going to have to go buy the Atari Power Brick and the AR boards and create your very own setup that way. But for a very basic kind of deal, this is really all you need. Very basic video converter. Okay. Well, that's how you build a basic PCB test station. Again, very, 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 very basic. You can't get any more simpler than this. Alright, thanks for watching, and it's time to go to the next project.